Hello everyone, I hope you've had a good week so far. Today in science class we're going to be talking about invasive species. Our goals for today, Thursday, March 25th are number 1, first to complete a notes entry on invasive species. So just like you have been doing with these video lectures, make sure you're taking notes when directed. Number 2, there are 2 video clips in this same folder. One is on the Asian carp, one's on the European starling, which is a bird. They're very short, but please make sure you watch them because I think you're going to be shocked, quite frankly, at the numbers of these organisms. And both of them were taken, both these videos were recorded in the United States. Lastly, submit a picture of your notes for your homework assignment. So in other words, the notes from today is going to count as your homework. So if you do not have paper and pencil in front of you right now, pause the video and go get it. All right, let's get started. Let's title this Invasive Species. And we have 2 focus questions. What is an invasive species and how can they impact an ecosystem? Let's first define invasive species. As the name implies, an invasive species is invading a new territory. So it's best defined as a non-native species in an ecosystem, meaning it came from far away, sometimes across an ocean, and was plopped into a new environment, whose introduction causes great ecological and/or economic harm. So not only are they going to disrupt those delicate ecological relationships, they're also going to cost governments and businesses a lot of money, billions of dollars a year in some cases. And again, that money is going to be spent on controlling the population of an invasive species. It might count as lost revenue, because if it's a recreational area, the invasive species might be making it, very unpleasant. They can be plants, they can be animals, or they can be pathogens. And all we mean by pathogens are microorganisms that cause disease. So what makes a particular organism a good invader? A lot of these characteristics are not going to be super surprising. First, anything that reproduces rapidly, that's a good quality to have if you want to be a successful invader. So plants, insects, small aquatic species, or small mammals all have rapid reproduction rates, and they typically reproduce in large numbers. Second, fast growth. One of the invasive species I'm going to be telling you about in a few minutes is a plant called kudzu that we have here in Pennsylvania. It's pretty much all over the US. It grows up to 60 feet in a single year. Tolerant to many different conditions. If you put something in a new environment and it's able to survive in a range of conditions, it's much more likely to be able to then survive in this new environment. And lastly, able to live off many different food sources. Again, if you put these organisms in a new environment and they have, they can survive on many different food sources, surely in this new environment then they're more likely to find something that they can consume for energy. So how do these invasive species travel? In other words, how do they get to these places where they really shouldn't be? The number 1 way they travel is humans, purposefully humans. Number 2, by water. And number 3, by wind. So when we're talking about humans, a lot of invasive species started off as exotic pets, like the lionfish here. Someone wants to have something cool in their aquarium. Someone wants to have a, exotic reptile, or a Burmese python. Burmese pythons in particular were started out as people's pets, and as they got, as you can see, very big, the pet owners couldn't handle them, so they would just release them into the wild, and that is where the problem starts. When we're talking about traveling by water, floods can be one way that species can go from one place to another, but typically we're talking about something more like ballast tank water. Ballast tanks are these inner chambers that large cargo ships have, and they will fill them with water if they're empty, meaning they empty of cargo, okay? That's going to give it some added weight when it is an empty cargo haul there, okay? Now, when they get to their location, which can sometimes be very, very far away, hundreds of miles away, they will then load cargo on, and they have to release that ballast water. And whatever organisms were in this initial location are then being released into this new environment. And that is how we believe the zebra mussels spread to the Great Lakes. We actually have them now in some of our Pennsylvania waterways. So let's add that to our notes. How do they travel? By humans. I put this image in there because There's a reason when you go through customs, if you've ever traveled to another country, that they ask you, do you have anything to declare? They'll ask you silly sounding questions like, do you have any fruit with you? Do you have any seeds with you? They don't really care if you're eating fruit. What they care about is preventing invasive species from entering their country. So that is why they have such strict rules nowadays on the types of things you can bring across borders. Water and then wind. So what's the problem with an invasive species? What kind of harm do they cause? First and foremost, they're going to outcompete native organisms for resources like food and space. Obviously, if any native organism's population is going to change greatly, that's going to impact all those different trophic levels. Invasive species may not have any natural predators in the new environment, like stink bugs here in Pennsylvania. That's why they're so populous. They have no natural predators. Nothing wants to eat them, so their numbers have just gone up and up and up. Now, sometimes we don't give predators the appreciation that they deserve, because predators, sometimes we just kind of feel bad for the prey that they eat, and we think that mean old predator. Really, they're doing us a favor. Predators keep the number of prey in check so that the population of prey can't get out of control. So I'm never, it never ceases to amaze me how nature always has these naturally built-in checks and balances. So if we just leave it alone, it'll take care of itself. But unfortunately, that's many times not the case. That ripple effect, keep in mind that trophic cascade. Okay, this isn't necessarily a trophic cascade. It could be, but it's that same idea that everything is connected. Okay, so let's add that part to our notes. How do they cause harm? They outcompete native organisms for food and space. They destroy habitats of native species. So kind of like the elk, as they started to overpopulate, they were eating all those little budding trees, which were taking away valuable habitats for small creatures. And again, they may have no natural predators to keep their numbers in check. And this is particularly true of the Burmese pythons, and they're found in the Florida Everglades.